point at which you finish it and the point when you start editing it. Because if you try to edit it 2 hours later, you just see what was in your head. You don't see what was on the paper. Having someone else help you with that, having reading groups is a good thing. Because the second set of eyes makes a big difference. So editing your work closely means typos, spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes. Oh, this courtesy of chemistry. So one of the chemistry folks says to the student, as you know, I choose one page from your bibliography of every student that I examine at random, and I subject it to a very close scrutiny in search of finding one that is perfect. Now the rest of the sentence you already know. It said, I have not yet found one. So bibliography management is very, very tedious and worth doing. Okay, we already talked about that. Being clear and consistent about the symbols and about the abbreviations and the kind of labeling you do, very important, including an appropriate legend. And I'd like to offer a word from the Academic Integrity Officer from the Faculty of Graduate Studies, which would be me. So, don't do it. Cite rigorously. We had a PhD come forward for defense, and 20% of it was plagiarized. That's the end of it. It's over. The person's out. Doesn't get the defense. This week, how many people have heard the news from Germany? Yeah. Minister of Defense writes a dissertation, plagiarized, cost him his PhD and his ministry. And it's going to have effects for Angela Merkel as well. Now, because of digitization, you are going to be submitting your, because of the digital technology that we are all currently immersed in, you will submit your dissertation in e-thesis format. It's going to be digitized. It's going to be a PDF. The PDF gets stored on a website here in the Dalhousie University Library, where the spiders crawl through there all the time, picking this stuff up and feeding it to Google and Yahoo and Bing and everybody else. So your work is now actually accessible to the world. Plus, a copy of the e-thesis goes to the National Library of Canada, because all research is publicly available from this university. With certain minor exceptions, we will hold a thesis out for up to 1 year if there are intellectual property considerations. That's a separate matter. So you send your e-thesis. Now it means that your thesis is actually accessible. And what happens is the AIO gets the little message from someone who says, excuse me, but this dissertation, which this person earned a PhD for, was picked up, part of this was picked up from my website in 2004. And indeed, we look into it, and we go to the Wayback Machine, and we have a look at what the internet looked at like in 2004, look at the website, and sure enough, there's the material. So now we have to find the student, the graduate, say, we're about to rescind your degree. You have to come in and defend this allegation of plagiarism. So you really don't want to go there. And I think the sensible thing is that what you should do is get your, if there's any doubt whatsoever that you have done this accidentally, the smart thing to do is to take your digital version and send it to turnitin.com. For you to do that through your supervisor. Okay. So there's a certain amount of sucking up that's entirely appropriate. You should be sincere even if you don't mean it. You know, that's, you should be appropriately humble, because the most important lesson that you can learn in your PhD at the end of the process is to develop a deep understanding of how little we know. I spent 5 years deep in the bowels of data modeling theory and practice. And on my way to my dissertation defense, I remember walking down the narrow street in London. I was at the London School of Economics thinking, on my way to the defense, I really wish I knew more about data modeling. And that's a good lesson to have. So, if you have English as a second language and you speak that's your maternal tongue is a language that has a lot of syllable production. So I'm thinking Chinese, Japanese, Italian, Spanish, French. Their syllable production is higher rate per minute than English. So if you then speak English at the same syllable rate as your mother tongue, that's a problem for English speakers to understand. So the simple rule is to slow down. Reading the slides is a bad practice, with certain minor exceptions. So with this recording now, I'll be able to go back and see how much I breached this rule as opposed to honor it. So, one of the things that is attractive when you're answering the question is to do so with some degree of fluency. Because if you're stumbling and you're pausing too much, then that undermines the confidence in your answer. So what you do is that if you're not entirely sure what the answer is, or what the intent of the question is, then what you do is write the question down and ask for a minute to think about it. That's entirely acceptable. And in fact, that's acceptable as an interview technique for a job. Okay, so this is very interesting because a lot of people don't know two important simple things with PowerPoint. Number one is someone says, you know that diagram you have on slide 26? Well, or slide 16. Well, first of all, wise people have, down in the corner here, a slide number. So what I should be doing is I should make everybody put up their hand and promise never to produce another PowerPoint deck without slide numbers. So they say, can you take us back to slide 16? And you know what most people do, is they do this, right? When the correct answer is a right click. Now, there's no mouse connected to this, so I'm going to have to just see if I can, there you go. And it says go to slide. And it says slide 16. And you'll notice that these slides have titles to them, and those are the same as the titles up there. So I can go to that slide, no problem at all. Slide 16. Okay, control right click, go to slide, I think I was on 23, if I remember correctly. Okay, so that's rule one. Okay. The other thing is if you want people to pay attention to you and not to look at the screen, then what you do is you touch the B key. And this is a really worthwhile thing doing if you want to have an interesting experiment. Stand in front of a room like this and watch everybody watching the screen. Hit the B key and you'll see all the heads snap to you. Because they're not going to look at the blank screen. Okay, and then you just touch the B key again. And it brings it back. Yes?
There's another way to jump to slides that's a little faster. If
Yes?
you don't have the mouse. You can actually just type in the number and press enter.
Perfect, thank you. No one of us knows as much as all of us. Perfect, thank you. The B key only works if you're using the English version. If you're using the Portuguese version, it's, I think, the N key for negro for black or something like that. So if you're using a non-English version of PowerPoint, you'll have to find the equivalent to that. And by the way, the W key produces a white screen, which is not helpful. Okay, so in this room you have the benefit of having a clock right in front of you on the back wall there. So as a matter of habit, I take my my watch off and consult it surreptitiously. It is important that you manage your time within the 20 minutes. So, you will, in the course of your dissertation, make many assertions. And an assertion is a simple declarative sentence. And you don't get to make assertions unless you can defend the assertion. Either the literature says, I have come to this conclusion on the basis of the evidence before us in this experiment. I have seen with my own eyes. You don't get to just make stuff up. Okay, so methodology is a very fundamental part of our work because the method that we choose to examine a question has a very serious impact on the answers that we are capable of getting. So that's a very important thing, and you must be able to explain what your methodology is and why you chose that methodology instead of some other. Should you be in a discipline that requires statistical analysis, this poses a special kind of burden for you because whatever you use as statistical parameters to explain your results, you have to be able to explain. Much to my astonishment, I have had a number of science defenses where, you know, it says, gives you the result, and then it says P is less than 0.05. When you're doing analysis of variance, P is less than 0. I've had a number of defenses at the PhD level where they say to the candidate, what does that P mean? No clue. That's an awkward moment. So, you have to be able to answer the question. These are the things we can fairly conclude given the evidence and the methods. And these are the things we cannot say. It's also useful to know what the limits are. Okay, so knowing what precedents for using the particular methods that you are using is a good thing. Okay, so measurement. This is a big topic for scientists because they find that many students really have a poor appreciation for the measurement technologies and the alternate measures and why you didn't choose to use those alternate measures. Okay. If you're working in a lab, you really want to have a reasonable understanding about what it is. If you're using a PCR, for example, or microarrays or something like that, you do want to have a basic understanding about the limits of the technology. Saying these are the results that the lab tech gave me and I can't explain it any further than that is not a good answer. If you are an interdisciplinary student, then you have to be able to address this particular problem. Well, what do you mean by interdisciplinary? Non-trivial question. Because you got your interdisciplinary, you got your transdisciplinary, you got your multidisciplinary. So that's a big issue. If you are an interdisciplinary student, you have the challenge of typically dealing with the incommensurate nature of two different research cultures. That's a challenge. Whatever methodology you use, it's not perfect. There are no perfect methodologies. So you must know what the limitations of those technologies are and methodologies. Not elsewhere classified is what the NEC means. Now, I have heard this a number of times. You know, chapter 11 there, I think it was just over my head. I don't think I got the really deep enough background to understand what you're doing there. But I have a question here. So you ought not to believe people when they give you that preliminary. This is not a time for comfort, okay? Because they're about to deliver a 45 caliber slug. Simple questions like, that DNA question. Simple questions usually have a reason behind them, so you want to be alert. Okay, we know about that. I wouldn't, I don't think apologizing is a good thing to do because it's a distraction. Short of breaking wind, I don't think there's really any need of apologizing. certainly if you misunderstand